You lined up a very special guest for us today on the business of sport, where we can talk about the business of sport and a very unique role that not a lot of guys can do, and not a lot of guys did as well as him. But then also a lawyer, a neuromuscular therapist,
okay, who is it?
Father of nine.
Like, father of nine.
Part of the
seven girls.
Seven girls knew the whole Alan Eagleson challenge that you were part of, and I think that's where you two met, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of really,
we actually met on the first. He was a player at that time. We met in Washington, and Ron Salser sold me to the crowd because I was getting beat up by Eagleson, because you can't destroy the message, you destroy the messenger, and they did a pretty good job of it. But I remember Ron Salser, another agent for those who don't know, he got up and said, well, they're attacking Rich, but geez, the guy married a girl with 3 kids. How bad can that be? How bad? And it was funny thing is Peter Bondra and Michael Pavanka, and I thought that was the dumbest thing you could say. It was the only thing they remembered from me. He's a family guy. Yeah, I want to talk to him. So that was interesting.
There you go. Well,
and then Neil did the same thing. He ended up he married a girl with 5 kids and brought 4 along with him. So interesting to see how talk to him about how he manages his job.
It's not like the Brady Bunch. It's like the Sheehy Bunch. As Neil Sheehy joins us. Neil, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Very well, thank you, Jason. Glad to be here.
Hey, happy to have you here. We'll get into kind of like the business side afterwards, but I do want to go back in time. So Neil Sheehy comes out, and you get involved pretty quickly in the Battle of Alberta, and back in the 80s, like it was heated. The Oilers were obviously the top dog, and the Flames were trying to take him down. When you came in, I think your first year was kind of like 84, 85, and you had come out of Harvard. Like, you're a smart guy, so obviously you were smart enough to realize, like, I gotta find a way to get 99 off his game. Because I'll be honest, like, I saw Steve Casper fall him around and shadow him and stuff, but I don't know if I ever saw a player who could get Wayne off his game as much as you did. Like, was that a concerted effort right from the get-go? Did someone tell you to do it? Did you decide, you know what, this is how I can make a name for myself and I can help my team?
Well, originally I saw Paul Baxter be put out there against Wayne, and I knew the best way to get ice time was if I could do a role like that, and so every time I tried to get on the ice against Wayne as much as I could, I'd take a short shift, and maybe guys would get tired, then I'd go out early and be able to go out against them. And finally, I started getting a few shifts against him, and I just tried to pester him. And next thing I know, Bob Johnson kind of started to put me out there against him more regularly, and then it became a role. So it was I tried to make it happen. All I wanted to do is survive and trying to get some ice time.
And it is like, you go after, and basically, like, that's going after the king of hockey at the time, right? It's Wayne Gretzky. And there was no shrinking, like, there was no shortage of shrinking violets on the other side, like Semenko. Like, so you knew when you do that, you would be public enemy number 1, Neil, right? And so that, was it difficult at all knowing, okay, I'm going to do this. I know I have to do this role, but God, there's going to be a lot of guys coming in for me, like Messier with a stick or an elbow, etc. How did you deal with that side of it?
Well, that was the role that I had to have anyway. And I figured that it was a lot easier if I was on the defensive. If those guys had to come after me, then I could sit back and wait, as opposed to getting out on the ice and trying to make something happen against them. So, I just I started to go against Wayne, and then I just had to sit and wait. And I knew guys were coming after me. Calgary also had the best power play in the league. Yeah. So, I didn't have to, I realized I didn't have to fight, because all the guys knew I could fight. But if you don't have to, and you just sit back and wait a little bit, you can have a little fun with it.
Well, and I don't know, I didn't really pay much attention to those games, Neil, but I know you must have been pretty intimidating when you were were you bench pressing or shoulder pressing Bob Lanza at a restaurant. Like, Neil, grab this.
I don't remember.
Yeah, you don't remember, but he's bench pressing a guy that's probably 180 pounds. I just thought it was funny. I don't remember why we were doing that, Neil, but it was pretty funny.
Neil, those days when you came in, and obviously, I think everybody, it didn't matter. You went to Harvard. You're a fan of the NHL, and everybody knew how dominant the Oilers were, and they'd obviously won their first Stanley Cup the year before, and then you guys had some epic battles with them in the playoffs. Take me through Bob Johnson and just kind of how as a coach, he really kind of built your team to take out the Oilers. Like that, like obviously your team was very good, it was very skilled, but you had a strategy, to go up against Oilers. It didn't work all the time, of course, but you were able to beat them once. And that's kind of unique that, to really kind of focus on one team.
Bob Johnson, I thought, was just a phenomenal coach. And, he just devised a plan, and he kept, he didn't stick with any one thing if it wasn't working. He always was, he was always looking at things that could work. But the big thing, he'd break down video, and he would show, how Paul Coffey would always skate up the right side on his backhand, and he'd gain the zone and go around the net. So then we talked about, well, don't let him get back in the play. So somebody just has to jump on him. And that was back in the day when you could hold people and grab guys and drag them down, and you didn't get penalties. So, then, there was talk about, even with, just watching Wayne would always be where the puck wasn't, so he'd be on the other side of the ice, be on the half board, the plays in the far corner. What I did was I'd go stand by him, because I knew 99% of the time the puck was going to be rimmed around the net and come to him. And so I just stood by him talking to him. And when the puck would actually get to him, I'd keep my hands down low and I'd push him against the boards, because I knew I'd get a penalty if I did anything other than that. So I never played dirty against him. I just played very annoying hockey.
His vision and seeing the game is what many people rave about, right? Like there's lots of guys who are maybe a little faster and definitely stronger, but he used his brain. And you're a pretty smart guy. Like when you watched him, even as an opponent, what maybe did you respect, or kind of at times be like, I can't believe that this guy's doing this? What was it about his game as an opponent that really stood out to you and you had the most respect for?
Well, like I said, he'd stand on the other side of the ice. The puck would be rimmed around to him, and then he would have the puck and have all the time in the world. He could put the puck on anybody's stick, right on the tape, anywhere on the ice at any time, especially when he has time. So what I realized is that rather than standing in front of the net, if I stood by him, you don't give him time, because he's the greatest there is when he has time. And a lot of times, well, he is too when he doesn't have time. But the key was just try and give him as little time as possible, and then try to get in his head by talking to him. And, so he would be thinking more about me than thinking about scoring goals or giving Yuri Curry the puck to score, or, anybody else on the ice for that matter.
So as a defenseman, usually it's like, hey, protect the house. You stand in front of the net. So if you're leaving the front of the net to go stand by him, obviously that was part of your team's defensive structure, that they would have had to change other guys, because I don't think they could just have you vacate the front of the net, correct?
Well, I was being told not to do it, but but it made no sense to me to be there if I knew there was a 99% chance that the puck was going to him.
Okay.
And then once we saw that was working, then nobody told me to stand in front of the net again. They just said, all right, just go out and play.
After you left Calgary, you went to Hartford for a season. Then you were in Washington. You actually came back to Calgary to finish up your career in 1992. But when you went out east to play for the Capitals, did you notice, we've always talked about, West and East is sometimes different. Did you notice, was there a different way the game was played in the Eastern Conference back in the late 80s, early 90s compared to the West?
Well, I think the game was a lot more wide open and more skating in the West. There are a lot of great teams, a lot of great skating teams. The travel was very different as well. In Calgary, we'd go on, 6, 7, 8 game road trips. Be gone when you go on the road, you're gone for 2 weeks. When you're out east, you're home for a night, and then you you go on the road, you go the night before a game, then you play a game, and then you wait till the next day to come back. So it takes 3 days to play one road game, unless you go on a lengthy road trip, which you would do when you go out west. But it was a lot easier the travel was shorter on the East Coast, but it just took too many days to play one game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I never even thought about that. Did you find, you said it was more wide open. Was your game better suited for the West or the East?
Probably the East.
Okay.
I think my game would probably, but everything if you find the right role, it doesn't matter whether it's East or West. And I certainly found the right role in Calgary and had a lot of fun, and it was it was good for me at the time.
And when you left, because Neil Sheehy, the Battle of Alberta, like we got a text coming from people, God, I hated him. Like that was, and that's a compliment, really, when fans can remember that you need villains are great in sports. Maybe it's not great to be the villain, but it's great for sports to have villains. Did you ever really feel that again in other markets, or was it just like, man, like when I was in Calgary, like I was kind of at the top of the villain scale?
Yeah, that's the way I felt, and I enjoyed that role. I mean, I had fun. Bob Johnson always said to me, he pulled me in the office once, and he goes, "Sheehy, come here." He goes, "Sheehy, you're just like an actor in a Broadway play." And I go, "How's that, Coach?" He goes, "You know what happens when actors can't act?" I go, "What's that, Coach?" He goes, "We bring in new actors. Now get out there and entertain those people." And so all of a sudden I sat there and I go, he's giving me a message. And I go, I said, I got to figure out what that is.
I think, but it's a testament to the way you played that you got a call from a guy, after Buckler chirped the daylights out of you for 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it was. And then you got a strange call from somebody that knew Muckler quite well a long time later, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't get a call from Muckler, but it was a friend of Muckler's he was the GM in Ottawa. And I was asked if I'd be interested in being an assistant GM. And I said, with all due respect, I mean, I would have loved to have talked to John Muckler at the time, but I just said, look, just let him know, I have a big family and I spent all my time traveling when I was a player. So I'm setting up shop in one home, and I need to control my own destiny, because a lot of times in management, you're hired to be fired.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be middle-aged and without a job. So I just created my own agency, and I've had a job ever since I stopped playing.
So tell us what the dinner table's like at the Sheehy house when the kids are young and you have 7 girls, your wife, and there's just the 3 of you boys. Like, what's going on at that table, man?
Lots of noise, lots of I was the youngest of 9, Rich, so I grew up with it.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I always said I wanted 9 kids. I always said I wanted 9 kids, and then I had 4, and then I married, a widow with 5. But I went into it knowing what I was doing. I said, I wasn't afraid of having 9 children, because I thought of all the lost potential. I think of all the lost potential my parents wouldn't have had if they didn't have number 9. So I thought, I thought of all the lost potential. If I don't marry this woman with 5 kids, I said I have to do it. So
you did it.
That was the story. Yeah.
Neil Sheehy joins. Now, Neil, I want to ask, because when you went to Washington, you're in the same division now as the young Merrill Lemieux with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Did you get the opportunity to shadow him similar to Wayne at all?
I tried. I remember one time Mario's coming down on me, and I come right out, and I put my hands in his chest, and he kind of just brings his body up, and he starts stick handling on the other side of me. And I'm sitting there kind of hitting him in the chest and everything. And I was, then he just, it goes with one hand, and then he goes around me, and I go, that didn't go so well. But I just realized what a beast he was, and just what a phenomenal player he was on an individual basis. Wayne had the ability to put the puck on anybody's tape, anywhere on the ice at any time. You know, Mario was obviously a tremendous one-on-one. You know, he was a great player. It was certainly different than Wayne.
So was it in a way, so they're different challenges, right? When you're defending Mario, you're like, oh my God, physically here, he can embarrass me. Whereas Wayne will embarrass me maybe more mentally because he'll see something that I'm not anticipating. So you must have had to play them very different. And that's got to be hard because you're like, it's not like I can change that much in how I play. It's just, you've got a kind of a savant on one side and then just a physical specimen on the other.
Yes. No, yeah. You know, like I say, Wayne used his brain and his skill to put the puck wherever he needed to be placed on the ice. Mario could certainly pass the puck too, but he was just a beast, you know, one-on-one, and he was so big and strong. That just amazed me playing against him.
And you can only imagine how he would have been if he actually worked out and didn't smoke between periods and before the game. And I remember Martin Stracker going to Pittsburgh, and he called me through the interpreter and said, are all the NHL teams like this? Like, we don't wear equipment for practice. Like, they did this, they wear their sweats for practice. Mario's never on the ice. He's having a massage, smoking after. He goes, he just couldn't figure it out. But, you know, I think we can only imagine what Mario would have been if he took, you know, had Sidney Crosby type focus. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that'd be crazy. Yeah, he was pretty skilled. Neil, we're going to take a break, and then I want to come back. And, you know, obviously we talk about, you mentioned how you started your own agency, which is very unique. So I want to go down that path because always in the business of sports, we'd like to talk about the different business elements and kind of how, you know, obviously I had a Harvard degree, so that might have helped you in one way, but I don't know if it was a business degree. So we'll touch on that next with Neil Sheehy here in the Jason Gregor Show on Sports 1440, sports1440.ca. Sports 1440, sports1440.ca. It's the business of sport. Our guest is Neil Sheehy, of course, NHL player, then NHL player agent, lawyer, and more. And now we're going to get into the business side of Neil's career. Of course, he was a player for many years, from 1984 to 1992, and then spent a few years in Europe. But you got into the player agency business, Neil. Kind of walk us through, first of all, who was your agent when you played?
I had two agents. My first agent was Brian Burke, who went to Harvard Law School. So I met him when I was at Harvard. And when he left to go to the Vancouver Canucks, I went with Bob Goodnow, who was also a former Harvard hockey player.
Okay.
So those are my two agents. Met them both at Harvard. And when I was thinking about what I was going to do when I was done playing, I said, well, maybe I'll go to law school and become an agent. So I guess those two guys inspired me to do that.
So you went to law school, you get your law degree, and then right into the agency business. Kind of walk us through how you started at that time, your own agency.
Well, you know, a guy like me doesn't, you know, you don't get a retirement tour or anything. You just go home and you're done. It's over.
Yeah.
It's funny. Players always ask me, they say, you know, what do we do when we retire? I go, just, go home and, say hello to your wife.
Totally. You used to tell me there's two steps to it. You take the trips you never could take in the winter with your kids. So it's maybe Disney World and Hawaii. Then you take that one Italian trip with your wife, and then you sit in the kitchen. That's it. You sit in the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, that works too, Rich. But
there's no idea, really, they don't prepare you. There's
no, when you're done, you're done. And there's people, well, do you write a letter? No, I mean, unless you just want everybody to know that you're kicked out of the league, you're done.
Well, Tyson Nash told me, he said, it's just so weird because they don't shut the locker door behind you. They lock it. You're in the room, you're putting your equipment on, and 2 days later, the room's locked and you're finished. He says, it's such a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went home and knowing what I wanted to do. So it was that summer, and I was hoping to play again, but then I didn't get any calls to play. So I had already applied to law school, and I deferred 1 year.
Okay.
And then I got a phone call from a guy who asked me if I wanted to go play in Europe. So I said, yeah, I'd love to go play. So I went to Slovenia, the capital city, Ljubljana, and I played a year. And I had so much fun that I wanted to go back for a second year, but they said that I couldn't because I already deferred 1 year. So I went to school. I took a class that summer, took a contracts class, and once you start, you have 3 years to finish. So I went back to the dean and I said, well, I'm not looking to defer a year. I'm looking to take a 1 year leave of absence. So they said, but your time starts now. And I said, no problem. And anyway, so I went and played a second year. And when I came back, then I said it was time to get on with life. And I started law school then, and I finished in 2.5 years.
So once you're done law school, how quick was it? Like, was it okay, I'm done law school, and the next week I'm like, okay, I'm going to start agency? Like, how do you come out of law school to start being a player agent?
Okay. So I'd been in the business for 11 years as a player. So I understood it. And then my roommate on the road in Calgary, the second time I was in Calgary, was Paul Ranheim. And so I met with Paul in the summer, and he said, hey, I'm looking for an agent. Why don't you be my agent? So right away, I started with an NHL player.
Okay, nice.
And then after law school, I just started, during law school, I was always looking at players and looking at young guys and looking at the draft and, just familiarizing myself with everything. And then I just started making calls to players and back then, I could get a player out of college. Like I got a guy named Jason Blake he was never drafted. I thought he was really good. I thought he had a chance to play. And, all of a sudden he played till he was 40 years old. Now I'm representing his son who's in the NHL in Carolina. But, I just went out and I looked at guys that I thought could play and just started to recruit. And luckily I was fortunate enough to be able to get some good players.
Neil Sheehy joins us, former NHLer, of course, a current player agent. And so, Neil, there was obviously an advantage, your former roommate, you get him as a client and you had played in the league. So, that's something a lot of other agents, like somebody out there who wants to be an agent, if you don't have the NHL resume, it makes it more of a challenge for sure.
Yeah, it's like it took 4 or 5 years to get some decent clients until the wall came down. I got lucky, but that's a long story.
And so, Neil, for you though, like what was as a player, you're always learning. What was like the biggest early learning curve of being a player agent for you?
Just really familiarizing yourself with the CBA. And, when I started as an agent, the CBA was 75 pages. Yeah. And then when Bob Goodnow came in and, everything was rewritten and it got a lot more complicated. And, then it went to like 555 pages. So I think the biggest thing was just really, you don't just sit down and read a 550-page document. What you have to do is you have to apply it to your players and just see how it fits. And then you learn as you go, really. But you always have to be looking to see, what clause in the CBA directly affects your client, whether he's a college player or a junior player or, third year in the league or fifth year in the league. And I think that was the biggest thing is just learning the CBA as you go, really.
Yeah, well, and it's always changing, right? Like every CBA, there's something new that gets put into it, and we've seen quite a few former agents become managers in the National Hockey League, and obviously Bill Zito would probably be the most successful one recently, having gone back-to-back Stanley Cups. I know that you mentioned how John Muckler maybe want to talk to you when you're done playing. You're like, no, I want to control my own destiny. Did you ever think about, after doing the player agent as long as this, would management in the NHL ever intrigue you?
No, it really wouldn't. There was a time where I thought about it, but I just knew it wasn't for me. So that's why I stayed on the agent side.
Well, the agent side is so good, Neil, and we have a lot of flexibility, and a lot of people don't realize that, you know, take if you're Bill Scott today, you got to be at the game. They have a schedule, and I used to take my kids on trips. We used to, I come in to see you if you're a client, and I tell you, oh, I forgot about the dance recital, Neil. I'm going to come next week. Players don't care, and you had a lot of flexibility to really enjoy family time, which was important, right?
Well, family is definitely important, and that's the big reason why, I just said, as I said, I didn't want to be hired to be fired, and being an agent, I could pretty well control my schedule. Definitely get out and see all my players, but I'd have a lot more family time, and when you have 9 kids, you need it.
Yeah. I thought 5 was challenging. 9's probably, I guess, twice as challenging.
A little bit of a different level. The CBA in itself, though, as a player agent, you mentioned just how much more in depth it is and comprehensive for players, and there's different rules for all different players at entry level, and when they sign a contract and what that means for their entry level kicking in. So many sort of factors, Neil. But the one thing, and I'm sure it seems at times, I've talked to Rich about this, like it seems at times it can be a little bit cutthroat. There's lots of competition, and some guys are maybe a little bit more greasier than others, and trying to hijack clients and different things.
Little bit be a slight understatement.
But
really, they paid you that much?
Yeah.
We actually had Yuri Hoodler in a meeting. I don't know if we ever talked about this, Neil. So I'm in the meeting. He barely speaks English, and he says, I'm very interested. You're the best. But for me, a $100,000 signing bonus from you now. And I'm thinking, the guy's 17. He already speaks the language. That's a lot of balls. But somebody paid it to him.
Somebody paid it to him. Wow. Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. So
hey, Rich, I recruited Yuri Hoodler as well.
Did you really? Did you have to go the same question?
It was only 10 for me, but
yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, what's his home address? Yeah, right.
No, but I just said I wasn't interested.
Yeah. Well, I actually had a father one time, and he was from somewhere north near Alaska, and his ask was, I think it was 150, but he didn't want his son to know, and he just wanted it paid to him because his theory was sensible. He said, look, I've spent all this money, training, sticks.
He wanted the money back.
He wanted the money.
Oh my God.
Like you're going, okay.
Yeah, but don't tell anybody, and don't tell my son.
Yeah, like that's a very straight up honest.
Some of the weird stuff that you've been exposed to, and then if someone else is doing it. Like he may not get his 150, but they're getting something, right? And the bigger agencies are doing that. They're not supposed to. They do it all the time.
I was just gonna say, like, is there, having been a lawyer yourself, Neil, like, is there anybody who monitors player agents to ensure that they're not doing things that they're not supposed to?
I don't know that anyone monitors it. I guess agents, you have to have evidence or that type of thing. The PA, if the PA knew that you were doing something, then they could act, but whether they find out or not is a whole different thing. And the other thing is, to me, if somebody's going to pay off a player, I'm not going to pay off the player, but I just move on to the next guy.
Because usually those types of players or those types of people aren't the players you want anyway. I always like what my partner Todd always asks when one of our clients talks to him about a player on his team that's interested. He says, is he our kind of guy? Because that's a really important question. I've had, Neil, you know this, like you have one bad apple, it's like 20% of your time just dealing with. We actually had the 2 bad apples. We won't probably name them right now, but oh boy, what a mess when you have a player that's a pain, isn't it? Really, and you get the guys $6-8 million a year players. They're pretty good guys. They don't have any problems, but sometimes those borderline kids will kill you, Neil.
Well, you know what? You do the best you can. You do the best you can, and if things aren't a fit, for the player or for the agent, sometimes you just have to walk away.
Yeah.
Neil, we're going to take one final break, but before then, for any of our listeners out there, it seems nowadays it's almost a prerequisite if you want to be a player agent. Having a law degree definitely helps. Not a must-have, but it seems that
more than
more than not have. Is there anything else? Like, what advice would you give to young people that are considering getting into the agency business? What are some must-haves that they're going to have to do if they want to be successful?
Really, I think it's really, you have to have an in the league, whether it's with players, with management. You have to. I think the more people and you can converse with, and then because a lot of people in the game too they can help you through a lot of different times, and being able to get in front of players is really important. So, I think the more people the more people you can get in front of, and then the more options you have to be able to get a player to say yes. Because that's what the business is. And,
Yeah.
Why me as opposed to Rich? But I don't compete against Rich because I'm not up in where he is. So, I have to compete against the people in my territory.
But for example, Neil, like there's not a lot of ethics in some shops, but there is an understanding. Like you and I don't have to name the individuals involved, but what did I do the first time? One of Neil's players reached out to me, and first call was to Neil, saying, "Hey, man, and you kind of blessed me taking over, and I'm probably never going to forgive you for that, but." That happens. You have lots of agents. You wouldn't even think of talking to their players because in certain situations, we know Kurt Overhart's doing a good job. We know Neil's doing a good job. They're friends of ours. We don't really, the other agencies are certain ones that the best thing that could happen to the player was to get one of us instead of them, So it's a dog eat dog world, but not across the board, right?
No, just like in anything, you have good people and you have people who you don't really care for because of the way they operate. So,
Yeah.
I don't worry about it. I go about my business. If I don't like a situation, I get out of it. And if I like a situation, I go hard after it.
Yeah.
We'll take our final break. We're going to come back more with Neil Sheehy and the Business of Sports and the Jason Gregor Show, Sports 1440, sports1440.ca. Jason Gregor, Rich Winter, our special guest, Neil Sheehy, joins, of course, took a law degree afterwards. Also now neuromuscular therapist, Neil. Obviously, no shortage of a quest to want to learn. Give me a little insight in how the neuromuscular therapy is going and how that maybe helps you as an agent.
Well, it's going very, very well. I see a lot of people. What I did is I realized in hockey, you can't make money if you're injured. And if you're injured, you're probably not going to get the next contract. And so what I realized was, there are a lot of things as a player, I thought I could, when I had an injury, I just felt there were other ways to look at the injury. And these things started to come to me. And then what I did is I started using different techniques that I had learned over time. And then I decided, I needed the formal training so people didn't think I was completely off my rocker, which they did. And so I went to school, and I started to become a chiropractor. We had 12 cadavers in the school, and once I studied the cadavers, I said it's not about the bones. For me, it's about the brain connecting to the soft tissue. So then I asked the school, what else you have? And they said, well, we have massage therapy. And I just said, I'm not interested in being a masseuse. And so what I did, I said, well, what else you got? And they said, neuromuscular therapy. And I said, tell me about that. And I said, that's kind of what's in my mind. And so I went to school for that. But I already had ideas of kind of the healing techniques. And so I've developed those, and pretty well, most hockey injuries, aside from broken bones, I can get players back on the ice very quickly.
Doing what? So kind of give us a little bit of insight into what kind of therapy do you use?
Well, what I do is first I find out where. So a lot of injuries come because your muscles lose their ability to absorb force. Okay, so your muscles do two things: they move your skeleton, but the biggest thing they do, certainly in sports, is they absorb force. And so whenever you get hit, whenever there's impact to your body, if your brain doesn't send the proper signal to the muscles to absorb that force will still go into your body, but it will all of a sudden it'll damage all the tissues and structures that are not designed to absorb force, such as ligaments, tendons, discs, bursa, fascia. Those are the structures that get injured, and those are most of the injuries in hockey. And so
it's like the groin pull can lead to a hip problem. It's sort of the same concept.
Yeah.
Right? So you got your muscles aren't aligned, and the body is pretty effective at absorbing force when everything's in alignment, right?
Correct. When everything's working, yes. You mentioned a groin. I mean, and I had groin issues when I was playing in the NHL, and now I can solve a groin within 2 days.
Really?
And do the contract and write up a real estate deal. It's like an amazing service, right?
Oh, for sure. No,
but it was interesting when you told me about it.
I talked to the players, and a player's out, and all of a sudden the trainer says you're out for 3 to 4 weeks. All of a sudden, if you have him back playing in 3 to 4 days, that's a big bonus. And
I've never been to your office, Neil. So do you have like a desk in the corner to play lawyer, and then like a massage table on there to manipulate the players when they come in?
I did, yeah. In my office, I did have a table, and then when COVID hit, I was there for about 2 more years, but nobody came to my office for about 2 years. So I moved home, and all my kids are out of the house. So I have a big house, and I work right out. I have an office in my house. So
it was just interesting when you told me that you were doing that, and it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of people in sports that aren't doing what we need done for players.
And Neil, I love what you said, because it's very true. Like, the best ability is dependability or availability, depending on how you look at it, right? And guys who can play all the time, and sure, if you're healthy, then maybe you can play more, which means maybe get more points or more playing time and whatever and lead to more money. But what about with your the neuromuscular therapy? Is there lots of stuff that you can do preventative, so it limits these type of injuries?
100%. But let's just let's take let's take concussions. I won't say concussions, because a concussion is a diagnosis by a medical doctor. Okay. So I don't deal with concussions, but I'm a head contusion specialist. Okay. And so when guys get hit in the head, I know exactly what to do. And guy often, and I had times where I'd been hit, and all of a sudden you're out for quite some time. I really haven't found anybody that I can't get back playing in a very short period of time.
So, because a lot of it, like I know with Sidney Crosby, they ended up realizing that, there's a lot of neck muscles and stiffness there that really was leading, he was diagnosed as a concussion, but they turned out many years later, they realized it was actually, it was more of his neck issue and the muscular stuff. But I'm even talking before, are there things you can do that say, if we're doing this type of, therapy on someone, it's going to lower their chances of having a groin pull? Or does that work or no?
Across the board, the answer is yes.
Okay. So what would you recommend? What are some things that athletes or parents of athletes should be looking at doing with their kids to help potentially limit the possibility of an injury?
Come and see me and get a treatment. No, but seriously, it when you, number one, because what I do is I find damaged tissue, and you have 12 cranial nerves that come out of the head and go through tissue. And if you have tissue that's damaged, you don't get the proper signals. When you don't get the proper signals, your muscles cannot absorb the force, and that's throughout the entire body. And then usually when guys get hurt, well, no, every time someone gets hurt, then all I have to do is find out what are the muscles that were shut off, and then I find the problem, and then I get all those turned back on. And really, in order to get the body to heal right, you have to get the muscles to turn on, and that's through different manipulation and getting the brain connected to the muscles.
Okay. I love it. Well, Neve, fantastic interview, man. Really insightful. Really appreciate it. Love people that are always looking to learn and great new things, and you know, kind of take control of your own path. So continued success in player agency world as well as the therapy world. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, Rich. All right, great seeing you. Thank you.
You too, man. Take care.
There you go. That's Neil Sheehy. Interesting dude, man. Like really interesting
so John
dude.
Muckler's looking down.
Why haven't you taken like neurotherapy training? Like, why didn't you get another degree? What's going on there? In the agency world, he's kind of jumping ahead.
Hold on. I have just finished my artificial intelligence certificate at MIT.
Nice.
And I'm currently in the process of being certified by the United States Artificial Intelligence Institute as, gosh, I don't even know how to. It's complicated. I don't even want to.
Are you like a head contusion? I like that. I like how he said that. That was pretty good.
It's fascinating what I'm learning, and it's a lot of it's in the health area. What's coming in AI, we'll be able to extend players' careers 5 to 7 years, easy, maybe longer. It's going to extend our lives quite a bit longer than we could have imagined. It's unbelievable what's coming, and all of these different AI, AQ are all converging at a time and improving their ability to help us exponentially. It's hard. You know, we think linearly. It's hard to think of multiple exponentially growing disciplines that are will help us become much healthier. People have it hard to believe that they're going to live to be well into the 100, 150. Your kids are our age. You know, our kids are going to it's mind numbing.